Mike's Meatloaf will be an easy sell because I don't have to figure out what you're trying to aspire to be.
How much candy did you eat on Halloween, Mike?
I eat a lot of candy on Halloween. What's your favorite?
I'm kind of weird. I love a good Almond Joy. I'm not going to lie.
I like
Or a
Almond Joy.
Mounds.
I was asking one of the boys for an Almond Joy yesterday, and they said they didn't have any. And I said, "What about a Skull? Do you remember Skull?"
Oh,
And
yeah.
And they're like, "What the hell is a Skull?" And I'm like, toffee and chocolate. There's Heath too, but it was never as good.
Those things that get stuck in your teeth, unless it's a Butterfinger. Yeah, I'm not there. But it brings me to a great fail story around Halloween. So my dad, when I was little, was in charge of getting the kids ready and out the door for Halloween, right? Not normally his thing, but my mom had something going on. So I'm sure I had a plastic mask that probably I couldn't breathe out of with a, garbage bag type of thing that, looked like something. My sister decided she's going as a bunny. So my dad took Sharpies and drew bunny whiskers on her. and colored Sharpie, pink nose, the whole thing. She had it on there until it wore off, tried to scrub it off, but just failed miserably. There's not a Halloween that goes by that my sister does not bring that up.
Oh my God. What about you? What was your favorite costume that you ever had?
That's tough. One of the last Halloweens I did, I made Ghostbuster uniforms for my buddy and myself. I thought they were the most fantastic things in the world, but I recently saw pictures of them, and my Proton pack was like 12 packs for soda, the box, the cardboard box that I just put tinfoil on and drew the Ghostbusters logo on there, slapped on there, a paper towel thing for the laser point. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. What about you?
I remember being Superman when I was younger, and my parents bought me the Superman pajamas to wear. Now, other friends that were Superman had the one that had the muscles built into the suit itself, and I was really jealous of that. So what I did is I took a bunch of socks and like stuffed it into the actual pajamas to try to give myself muscles, but it just looked like weird growths, like goiters, things like that. Like it just didn't look right. But people gave me candy either way.
You got the candy no matter what. No matter what. Well, Speaking of superheroes, our guest today is going to dive into some superhero-dom, if you will. He is an amazing designer, owner, partner at Bright Great, based in Chicago, a design and UX company. So when we come back, we're going to be joined by Jason Schwartz. Now, Jason is the creative director, partner at Bright Great in Chicago, leading digital and UX for over 20 years for top brands. If you're not familiar, Bright Great is a full-service, strategic, creative, interactive agency. BBG, as they go by, strives for creative success through good design, usability, functionality, and based on data-driven results. Interactive video, photography, interface design, applications, mobile web, copywriting, information architecture, user design, marketing, identity work. They do it all. And I first met Jason about 15 years ago or so when I hired BBG to do some work for me while I was leading a marketing division for Comcast. And excited to have you here. We're going to talk a lot about leadership, design, and you're in a unique space. So Jason, first off, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. You actually got our synopsis pretty down, which was great. I'm going to have to spell it out and use it.
Well, I want to dive in first because you're in a unique and competitive space. So talk to me about what made you get into running a design and web company to start off with.
So our agency is 18, 19 years old. I've been doing this for about 25 years. And when I started and really wanted to put something together that had a lot less red tape. So I had worked at Inc. 500. I had worked for a startup that had just a few people. I've kind of seen the wide range. And what I wanted to do was eliminate as much red tape as possible in the design process, which, of course, as you continue to grow, more red tape. the bigger they are, the more red tape there is. But I wanted to start, so I left at Inc. 500, and at that time, it was kind of the birth of online brands, and this is the early zeros. The original .com bubble had just exploded, and people were starting to realize, I need to be in this space. I need to tell my story. I need my phone number online to be found, things like that. We've had a lot of phases since then. It was e-commerce next, and then web apps, and then apps, and then social media, and now we're in the AI every phase of the internet. But the reason that I started was really, I just wanted to hire the most talented small group of people to be able to knock down huge projects without having to be a 200-person agency. Our aspiration is always 10 to 20. And within that, you could find 10 really specialized, really talented, really amazing people who could really do the job of a team somewhere else. And that's always what BBG has tried to be, a fully expert team to just come in and tackle something really big.
Jason, where does the name come from? Bright, bright, great.
So that's a great question. I would say about half of our clients ask us, and the ones that don't always end up cutting the checks to the wrong name. Bright green, bright, bright green. But people do ask us, and around this time, it was when everybody was scooping up all the .com URLs. So when we were looking and starting out, I had a partner at the beginning, and we wrote probably 10 pages of just name ideation. And what we really wanted to do was find something that mimicked who we are and the type of design work that we do, because names could be really generic and not tie into some sort of personal philosophy, but we really wanted something that tied to the personal philosophy. I happen to really love designing in neon and getting a little flashy. So we went through and we looked through and got it down to about 10 names. The first thing we did was our digital due diligence, which was, does something like this exist? And for about half, we found that they did. And for Bright Bright Great, there's I think we were first, but there's a shipping company in Hong Kong called Bright Bright. So we occasionally get quotes for shipping containers every now and again. But I don't think there's really any sort of confusion that we're not the same company. Websites and brands, cargo going from Hong Kong. So Bright Bright Great can be very distilled. Bright, intelligence. Bright, colorful, which could be visual, but also personality and things like that. And then great work. So it can be bright, bright, great, which really is who we are and aligns with the philosophy.
I like that a lot. And with that, I wanted to ask, how did you really get into this? JD and I always talk about origin stories. And I mean, were you a kid that wanted to design things? Like, how did this all start?
So there's a lot of lifetime ping moments where something happened that defines who you are, changes how you think, really interests you in something you didn't know exist. But you have to remember there's kind of two philosophies on the modern day interface and UX and experience design and all of the things that we have currently. Xerox was doing with interface design in the 1950s. Some of the best designed furniture came from 1900 to 1920. So good design has been around, but what we do today didn't exist when I went to college. So how this all started was when I was 5, 6 years old, I was riding the bus to school and something caught my eye. You know, kids were trading baseball cards and trading their lunch for various things on the bus. And the first thing that I saw was that really, really excited me in a very different way was Garbage Pail Kids. Great concept. It's Halloween. We're talking, you know, Adam Bomb and Trashy Ashley and Jay Decay. So it's 1985. Topps was hiring the absolute best artists coming out of schools in New York. And you have people like Art Spiegelman, who wrote Mouse, which is like a critically acclaimed. And you have all these people making these like joke things. But behind it, it was such an amazing group of creatives. And it really caught my eye, different than everything else I was seeing. So for that whole year, I was trading my dessert away every day on the bus for a card and collecting them slowly. But it was the tangibility, the colors, the type, the printing process. And that's what really started to get me interested in art. And so I am a pretty terrible drawer myself. It's not my skill set. But I could recognize it. And so I really continued to collect these. I loved that they were a hot commodity. And then kind of continued through in elementary school, one of the first school years to use computers, which was, again, a big change from in the past. I think it's called a Zennial, which means I used the card catalog and I also played, you know, number crunchers on the Mac. So I'm right in the middle. And then when I got to junior high, same thing. Oh, we're writing code, we're making games, really interesting stuff. When I got to high school, first group of students to use digital photography, use Photoshop, Adobe products, tablets. And that really just kind of kept the fire going into college. I applied for industrial design, and I got my undergrad I got a BFA, and then I went and continued on and got an MFA. All of this stuff was before the modern web. So my BFA, I'm carrying a T-square and a block of wood, making isometric drawings. That wouldn't be taught at all anymore. However, I wouldn't trade those skills off because I really liked being in the middle of knowing both, being able to do it both ways. So got to college, and this is a true quote. My senior year, my project in my undergrad was to design being in Chicago, we have O'Hare, we have Midway, we have Metra, we have all the transportation. And it was a device that you held in your hand that you could call a cab, view flight times, or find bus routes. And I mean, this is 1999, 2000. This sounds common, but it was not when I was working on it. And so I remember I was showing my idea to the director of the department, and he said, "Why would anyone want this?" And I said, "I don't think you see the future like I see the future." So it was all about, it doesn't matter what the device is. It's about creating a tool to make things easier for people to use. Then I had a really hard time breaking in because I was looking for jobs in 2001. And I just started making tons of various side hustle projects. I did a music trading site where people could trade a CD with someone across the world, and I randomly paired people up every month. I was just designing everything I could get my hands on, not for a client, but just to have that portfolio. That's what got me in for my master's. And during that time, I studied with someone who was basically a leader in the focus of human-computer interface model, which is basically we're at an actual shift again, because it might not be human computer interface so much longer, but it has been for this whole time. And it was really about how we use things and creating great experiences for people to use things. That could be a website, that could be engaging with a brand, it could be a kiosk, it could be figuring out how to get from an airport to your house.
So talk to me, Jason. You've led teams all these years, and talk to me about leading creatives, right? It's way different than leading a team of tech workers or bankers or lawyers or what have you. Talk to me about that art of leading a creative team.
I would definitely say that my experience here has changed, having a company now for 20 years. There's really two types of creatives: those that either want to lead or those that want to do. There are a lot of creatives that never want to be in the red tape. They only want to remain in the creative. First, things that you have to kind of pick out between those is what type of creative that person is. And every creative is very different. Some really work independently. Some are really great on teams. Some are really skilled at something and not others, and not other things. And it's about picking that stuff apart. And that's usually how I look for someone to join our team. Is I'll look for a particular skill and I will say, do you want to do this particular skill? Also, this is our team. This is how we work. So as I interview people who might be coming from a company of 10,000, it's a big difference to come to BBG from like a Google or a Facebook.
Wonderful. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Mike's got some questions for you. I want to dive into the design world, managing client expectations, but also where AI fits into that. And we're going to hit all of that after the break.
Have you ever been hit by a parked car? Perhaps you fell off your unicycle that was built poorly. Maybe you slipped outside a business and broke your whatever. Hi, I'm Jack McMullen with McMullen Law and Associates. You're probably wondering, who is Jack? For the past 35 years, I've been in courtrooms fighting for you. For the past 5 months, I've actually been a lawyer. Please call me at 773-555-5555. And remember, Jack's got your back, especially if you broke it while taking public transportation. All right, we are back with Jason Schwartz. I have a question for you, and it's about brand building. Let's say that I have a company called Mike's Meatloaf, and all we sell is meatloaf. And we've been doing it for 50 years, and we're not changing a thing. Do I need to reinvent myself? Do I need to catch up with the times? Am I building a good brand? What do I do? And what does even brand building mean to you?
Well, Mike's Meatloaf will be an easy sell, because I don't have to figure out what you're trying to aspire to be. It's very interesting. I love legacy and long-standing brands. They may have been having the conversation, or they may have not been having the conversation. I think it was in 2022, we had the opportunity to work with 2 companies that were having a 100th anniversary, which is a lot of story. Where did that meatloaf recipe come from? You know, whose pocket was it in when your great grandparents came from wherever in the world? We also got to work with a company that was 1,000 years old. We got to work with the North American presence of Buddhism, which was pretty crazy. It's still a brand. And so the way that I would start with this is I would dig into the history. A lot of companies lost their essence when computers continued to grow. So they had hand-painted trucks, and everybody had delivery uniforms, and everything was really buttoned up if you look back at brands in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And that is where I would want to dig in, because the first thing that I would really want to do is the research of, if you've been doing it the same way and it's working, why? Is it solely because people love you? Do people want to engage with your brand more? And I think that's interesting, and it would be a slightly different answer depending on who you are. We had a client who was a 3-generation HVAC Chicagoland area. They were expanding and looking to figure out their online presence and get in front of people in a different way. And the first thing that we asked them was, do you have any photographs of your history? And they brought in a manila folder that was just filled. And we were looking back at some of the stuff from the 50s and the 60s, and it was gold. Their brand was perfect. It was painted on 4 stories on the side of a building. They had all these milk trucks that had it all hand painted. And the first question that I asked them was, what happened to this? And the answer was, well, when computers came out, we just used the font that was on the computers, which meant they were limited to whatever the first 3 fonts were. And they stole an image of some animal, and that became their whole deal. That burned out an awesome heritage. And another company, 100th anniversary, they were the first importer of needles, of sewing needles into Chicago. Now they make sports apparel. But that story, every decade, there's a story. How did you go from being the first importer of needles, sewing needles, to the first company that went to Wrigley Field and pitched licensing Cubs uniforms outside of the stadium? And what we ended up doing was, we actually, because they didn't have the complete story, we ended up creating for them for the first time what they were doing each of the decades. So we were looking back and being able to say, this is when you went to Wrigley Field and basically became the first sports licensing company. This is what happened when you got the entire Major League Baseball license. This is what happened when your brand became trendy and Tupac is wearing your hats and things like that. And then here's where you are now, and it's 100 years, and you have this wide expanse of spaces that you create in now. And how do we tell the story from then to now? So what we ended up doing was creating a brand manual that spanned 100 years. I've never done that anywhere else, but that's what I would do with your meatloaf, is I would try to really figure out, why is the meatloaf today like it is? Why do people love it? And I'm a meatloaf lover, so I've done my personal research already. But really try to get the essence of, why are you special in this space? What's different? And food is unique and interesting because typically you grow to sell. Pepsi just did a $1.3 billion acquisition of a tortilla chip company. That's a lot of money for a tortilla chip brand. And so I don't know if I could get you there myself to Pepsi, but I definitely would want to position you in a way that you could be that.
Jason, in the design and UX world, client expectations can change rapidly. How do you stay adaptable while keeping the morale of your teams high? Because they're behind something, and then all of a sudden, it turns 180.
The easy answer for this is that designers should not be designing for their own personal heart. There is the love of design, but I'm being hired to work on something very specific for somebody who may or may not have that be their big love. That's important. For a long time, it was very important that it was like, no feedback, my way. Then I realized, forget that. It's really whatever you want, not I'll do whatever you want, but I want to know what you want. And from that, we can come up with the right answer. We pair with our clients as partners and thought leaders, not a contractor. So people will call us and we're not super reactive in our work because we are having those conversations early. We're proactively maybe throwing out suggestions. So it's very rare that it's like a last minute, everything is going to change, but that happens in business. We've worked with clients where we're at the 90th percent of the project and they were sold. Everything's got to change. All that stuff we can roll with the punches. I think that on a small team and being very nimble, we don't have a lot of fluff in departments. So when something comes in, we are fast. And right now I'm working on creative for the election, and things are changing every day. We're about a week before the election, and I'm working with two nonprofits that are they're bipartisan, and they're both about helping people vote. And so things are changing every day. New graphics are being required for every day. The most important thing here is 1, clear communication, and 2, organization. If someone can tell you tomorrow we're going to be focusing on this because this happened, great. And if it's organized, as in I'm not just getting a brain dump that doesn't have an answer, I can do that, but it's a lot easier when we know where we're going. Project management is really, really important. BBG has a fantastic project manager. And with that is an OCD type personality of organization, which I have too. So it's really nice for creative and PM to be on the same page, where if you look for something, it's there. We can react fast when that happens. Otherwise, because we work with people all over the world, if we miss the window, so in the morning, we know that we only have a couple hours with Middle East, Poland, Belarus, but we know that we have the whole day with Argentina. So we have to make sure that we're able to get those things done so that we can use the full day and not wait for answers. My first job ever was here in Chicago, and we were owned by a company in Jerusalem, and we only had an hour a day of overlap. That could go 2 ways. 1, you can answer all your questions and then you can work and basically do 2 days of work in 1 day, or you ask the questions, you don't get the answer, and 1 day of work takes 2 days to get the answer. So I particularly like the get the answers and go, but every client is a totally different partnership. A lot of times people view us more so as part of the team. And I don't think that it would be really healthy for our team as is to work with people who just viewed us as a contracted set of hands.
I was looking through my old comic books the other day, and I was showing them to my son, and he wants to pull them out. He wants to read them. And I'm like, please don't.
These need to stay.
Because they've been in plastic for 40 years, 30 years, some of them. And some of them I haven't even read. I read that you worked for your uncle's comic book shop. And that kind of triggered something for me, because I collected a ton of comics, Batman comics specifically. I still have a box of them. And I'm like, maybe if I sell them, I can pay for college for the kids. But I don't think it's going to go that far.
Well, depends what Batman comics you have in that box. I don't know if you know this, but I have an enormous comic collection. So we could sidebar that for another 4 hours.
Yeah.
But that was each of my jobs I've really enjoyed for various reasons. I was 13 when I started working at his comic shop. I worked for comics. So I was paid in 1990s comics, late 80s comics, which
what was your go-to? What was the comic that you were really interested in?
I mean, that era was when everything was getting so insane. So everything was just a comic book until you had foil covers, and then diamond foil covers, and then sparkle covers and cutouts. The most, not trendy, but like the cheapest trick to get people to buy stuff was like emboss, deboss, cutouts, glow in the dark. All that stuff was the 90s.
Do you remember when Superman died, they put like a garbage bag on it? The white garbage bag?
Black bag.
Yeah, maybe it's black.
We just had the 50th, what was it? Not the 50th, the 35th anniversary of that, but they re-released it. I waited in line for that comic at my local shop. Sold out so fast. And what's funny about that comic is that it's actually not valuable today. Right. It's a surprise. Superman dies. It's a big thing, big moment in comic history, but not actually a big collectible. I have been collecting pretty much nonstop since working there. And I took from that, continued my love of design, graphics, all of those things, all of the print things that I just talked about as the easy way to sell. I use all those things in print now and for clients. I also, that was my first unofficial job because you can't legally work when you're 13. But when I was 15, I worked at a hamburger stand, and I still have nightmares about that job. To date, I have at least one dream about it per week because it was so stressful for me to be taking orders from people. I don't know how to cook. I'm 15. I can't make all of the things that are at this place. And when I was working at this hamburger stand, I was making the food, taking the orders, running the cash register, all of the things that now are mostly automated, or you probably don't have a 15-year-old doing, but it was so fun. I learned so much. I'm still not a great cook, but just working at that place, the boss was amazing. The other people I worked with were amazing. Everybody was really helpful. And it was just a different skill set altogether. And a lot of those high school and college jobs, you get those things and you have to take them with you to learn from them. But yeah, I mean, I've been a lifeguard at a retirement home. That's a whole different set of things. Been around the block a few times, but I definitely like the design space and the digital space now.
Well, since you worked in a burger place, I think you could definitely work at Mike's Meatloaf.
Mike's Meatloaf needs you. So going back, I'm curious, how do you see your leadership style evolving? You had all those great experiences, growing up, and then 20 years, running your business. What new skills are you working on to develop as a leader?
So the interesting thing about our space, and I know that before you had mentioned banking and technologists and things like that, there's half of the people out there are union even, which is a very specific set way to run your show. Design and creative is very interesting because you can find musicians and they have to be part of a union. You could find film and actors and they have to be a part of a union, but our space is not. And so what that leaves is the ability to basically run things however you want. And over time, I didn't go to school for business. Everything that I've done related to my business has been on the fly. Granted, now it's 20 years later, so I get it. But the relationship that I've had with team has definitely changed. So one thing that I knew from the beginning that I always wanted to do was still have hands in the pot on creative. It's my love. That's what I want to remain. So when we work with our clients, I might be writing payroll in the morning, but I'm still working with the client in the afternoon. I can't be removed from that process and BBG remain BBG, at least right now. We have tried like a different creative director or different people in design leadership, but it changes the flavor. So it's over time, something that I've realized is that I can't step out of it and it still be what I want it to be. Granted, that's how things work. If I had 3 partners, it would be 3 inputs and 3 ways of doing things. The thing that I have really changed over time is 2 or 3 things. One, trust in my team. When I first started and we went from zero, we started our business with no money. So I didn't make any money for the first year. I think it took 9 months for the first money to come in. You have to play everything very safe because it goes from $0 to negative $100,000 real fast. So at the beginning, everybody I was hiring was either an intern or junior, no experience. And that actually led to more of those issues with like responding to client demands and things like that. Over time, I've really realized that I prefer small team with experience and a few junior and mid kind of watching the show and being able to add in where they want to add in. But the people who are leading the day-to-day have been there and done that and are really good at doing that. And so that's why the leadership team is all senior. Everyone's 20 plus years. And that's hard when you can try to find a manager in Chicago or Facebook is offering them a job and it's, 8x what you can offer. I don't think that is the same anymore with what people are looking for in jobs. I think that people are looking more for a team that they want to be a part of and job stability versus maybe a 1.5x. I personally would take the flexibility over that extra 0.5. People that I work with, our project manager, she lives on a farm. She farms crops before and after work. And our biz dev lead is the principal oboe of a symphony. Everybody's really good at what they do. And they're also really good at other things too. And the flexibility we have allows them to still do those things, which ultimately I think is what makes life more fulfilling. So design at the end of the day is a job. We work for clients for money, but if we can make it a little more flexible and give people the ability to pursue passions, we try to do that with the clients that we look for. So Marvel Comics, if you want to call, Disney, if you want to call, we are here. Hershey's, we're here. But we always, every year we make like a dream client list, which we try to infiltrate through marketing somehow to get in front of people who work at some of these places. But those definitely make projects more fun. Unless, of course, that project isn't fun, and then we'll give you the sour taste from, oh man, I wanted to get into this so bad, and now look at what happened.
Jason, I'm curious, what inspires you creatively, and what do you need to get there, to get in that headspace to create? Because sometimes, for me, I've had writer's block. I've had days where I'm like, I can't do a damn thing. I can't create anything. JD takes really long walks, excessively long walks, to brew up his
JD
creativity.
Takes 45-mile long walks, which makes work really hard.
So I'm just curious, what do you do? Do you listen to music?
So I think this is different for every single creative, how you get over the block, or, there's a lot of little bumps along the way. I am always eyes open with the world. It could be music, it could be art, it could be I'm walking down the street and I see some graffiti, I see a billboard, I'm really inspired by what some other designer did. I'm really inspired by a company. I am the living, breathing, creative eyes open. I'm always looking for stuff. So on my phone, I have a folder. When I am just out and about, I take a picture and I'm like, let's revisit this when we need to talk about something. I do think that really successful designers have something like that in their life, that they're really into. There's hunger for creativity. There are also some designers who I know that aren't exactly super creative themselves, but they're really good at the business side of design. And so they're successful for a totally different reason. But I think that is going back to what I had talked about before. There's designers that want to be the business designers, and there's the designers that want to just be this like outpouring of creative flow forever. I play guitar. I've been in bands. I collect art. I collect comics. I am involved in cons and trade shows and things that are related to the stuff that I really love, because going out there and seeing everybody else's passion is fueling. But if I'm just stumped one day, I will just walk away. So I've never had something that has like definitively stumped me for that I can't do, because design is really interesting in that there are a lot of right answers. There are also a lot of bad answers and incorrect answers, and there's probably a lot in the middle. Different than I have to fix a car and I know it's this part that puts these two together. A lot of times good ideas and those breakers come for me when I'm laying in bed at night and just kind of getting ready for bed, and I'm letting that pressure of trying to solve those things out of my brain. I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, okay, this plus this is what I really want to do for this logo, and here's how we're going to implement it. And I just make an audio note on my phone and then, or send myself a reminder for 9 a.m. the next morning. And that's how I break that block. I could do that a lot at night. I could also do that a lot with the brand stuff when I have an unlimited canvas. So if I'm in the shower, I'll be drawing logos and I just have the steam just keeps getting rid of them. So it's this unlimited, I can just keep them coming. And if I really like it, I'll pop out and I'll draw it on a piece of paper.
That's fantastic. Well, you guys have worked with so many great brands: Cards Against Humanity, American Needle, Eli's Cheesecake, Stern Pinball, Coldwell Banker, Rivers Casino, a lot of great logos. So as we wrap up here, Jason, I do have to ask, what's exciting? What's next here at BBG?
So it's an interesting time in our space, and we could go on about this in particular for a whole other hour. But as tech strengthens the grip in California, you're starting to see strength more in the other places. That's exciting to me, because I do think that there's going to be a really great opportunity for those small, medium agencies at the end of this, which I think is probably mid next year. You're going to stop hearing that Facebook is doing rounds of layoffs, and what it's doing is it's dumping tons of amazingly talented people into the open market. And I think that once it's an election year, always a weird year for business. We're post-pandemic, weird year. Tech is laying people off left and right, weird. So I think once some of those things start to shake out, everything's going to be back to normal business. And I think with that because we already get big calls, we get calls from companies that we're up against a team of 250 people or 1,000 people with 10. We're the only team that shows up to a lot of our pitches not in suits. That's not who we are personality wise, and that's not who we will be. But I'm really excited to see how the next year unfolds. 2024 is all about AI, how it's getting integrated in all the products that we use, how our products are changing. And I'm interested to see how that changes people's skill sets and what it's going to ultimately do for our space in general.
Wonderful. Jason, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you
Jason.
so much.
Jason's always a fun one to talk to, and he is so excited and energetic. You see it in his face when he talks about design and creative and the process. It's absolutely fantastic.
I have a lot in common with him because we both collected comics as kids, and we both had Garbage Pail Kids. I didn't get to talk to him about it during the session, but he was naming some of them. Did you collect these at all? Do you remember these, JD?
No.
Okay. I mean, there were great ones like Unzip Zach, Toothless, Atom Bomb, Hygiene. They were great. And each Garbage Pail Kid had two different names. And I had all of them. And apparently they're worth a lot of money now too from collectors. But it was so much fun to hear him talk about that and how that sort of art influenced what he did, the choices he made, and the direction he headed from a very young age.
Well, it was great to have him on, and please look up Bright Bright Great BBG because they do some fantastic work out there. As always, you can listen to past episodes of C Level Up wherever you get your podcasts or at jamesdwayne.com. Thanks for listening.